Morning, friends. I have this huge collection of videos on this channel, and it always surprises me sometimes which ones become sort of perennial favorites. There's one in particular that I get comments on very, very regularly. I'll link to it down in the description. And this video has to do with earworms. You're trying to go about your day, but there's this little song playing over and over and over in your head, and you can't get rid of it. Now, there's one kind of comment I get on this video that I have to answer over and over in a long format. And I've just thought, you know what? It's going to be so much easier to create a video to tell people how to get rid of earworms permanently rather than trying to write this out over and again in the comment section of that video. The comments I'm referencing are a plea for help. There's someone who is so affected by these earworms and they just cannot get rid of them. It happens to them all the time and they feel like it's literally ruining their lives. Here's the thing though, you can get rid of earworms completely. I used to be very affected by them. Now they have no power over me. I can listen to any pop song you want and it won't be able to lodge itself in my brain. The recipe for achieving this is not simple. I'm not going to kid you, but it has so many other benefits that to me, it's maybe the stuff I'm going to share with you right now, possibly the best investment you can make in your life as far as being able to actually appreciate and enjoy this experience of living. Here's a recipe. I'm going to start with some behavioral changes. These are not the ones that I'm talking about that can completely change your life, though I'd argue it could maybe make your life a little better. And then I will get into the real meat of this. First thing you have to do if you want to get rid of these earworms completely is to recognize that earworms are not the fault of some external thing, namely the music. They are the fault of our mind's inability to regulate its own thought processes and our unawareness of what our mind is doing. That being said, there is a road we will travel to achieve non-earwormage. To get to this destination, we have to recognize that right now we're way back here. These songs have power over us. So the first thing we can do is to limit our intake of those songs. No, wait, I love music, you say. Yes, there is so much music out there. The first thing we can do is change to kinds of music that are complex and preferably nonverbal, instrumental, in other words. When a song has repetitive words sung over and over, it lodges itself in our mind much more easily. So, a perfect example is classical music. Classical music is typically complex and nonverbal, and it doesn't tend to stick in the average mind in the same way that some song by, I don't know, your given pop artist will. Some time ago, a friend turned me on to a band called Wardruna. So there are a lot of these sort of Norse folk music. It's kind of dark, but again, it's very complex. Sometimes it has chanting, and that chanting can lodge itself in your mind, but again, not often in the same way as that modern pop music does. There's all kinds of other stuff out there. My girls love Lindsey Sterling, incredible violin player. And her music, once in a while, it can lodge itself a little bit, but it's not designed in that same way to just stick itself in your head. In general, the key is to avoid the really popular stuff. The really popular stuff is really popular because it creates that earwormage. Explore the musical world. So many cool things out there. Find some things that don't stick in your head. Next, we can limit our intake of junk media in general. By junk media, I mean, you probably know what I mean. Junk YouTube videos, all the kind of crap that just we watch and afterwards we realize that we've gained nothing from it. We've just watched it. Maybe we got, yes, a moment of amusement, but often that amusement maybe comes at the expense of some other creature or person. It doesn't feel good or nourishing inside of us. A media source that's just as damaging to our mind's ability to regulate itself, that might surprise some people, is news. These news programs, it's good to be informed, but when we imbibe in those a lot, you're going to notice that they have a certain way that they present the news. Alert, alert, look at this. This is dangerous. This is happening. Trying to make it really, really dramatic. That's training our mind into a dysregulated state. If you want to get news and be informed, go online, find a number of different news sources and that have different perspectives, and choose those perspectives wisely. Go and read stuff that isn't flashy and alerty and dramatic. But in any case, if you want to achieve any ability to really regulate your mind in the face of these earworms, it's going to be pretty important, especially in these beginning stages, to moderate your media intake in general. Social media, YouTube, all this stuff. Now that you've moderated, start to make conscious choices. As I said, with news, you can make switches that make sense. You can keep that mission of staying informed, but do it in a way that doesn't juggle your mind around so much. So if you've just eradicated stuff in those beginning steps instead of replaced, now's the time to thoughtfully replace things and see if you can bring things into your life that give you the same, or I'm going to say probably more enjoyment than this stuff did. And it won't be messing with your mind in the same way. The real reason, now we get to the real meat, the real reason that these earworms are sticking is a lack of mindfulness. What is mindfulness? That's a real popular term. I'm going to call it just awareness of our mind's activity. With awareness of what our mind is doing comes the ability to regulate our own mind. It's like movement. If you have somebody that's rather uncoordinated and you try to teach them a cartwheel or a front roll, it's going to be a mess. It's not about teaching them that skill. It's about working on that basic coordination. And more than that, that ability of them to sense where their body is in the world. It's called proprioception. Once we develop that proprioception, the ability to know where our body is in relation to the world, where our limbs are in relation to the rest of our body, we become less floppy and more controlled in our movements. It's identical with our minds. As we develop the ability to be aware of what our mind is doing, we will naturally then develop what some people would call control of our minds, or the ability to regulate where it's looking, what it's doing. This means a mindfulness practice. Now, there's two ways that you can do this, and I'd recommend hitting both of them. The one is developing a meditation practice. I have lots of videos on meditation on this channel. I'll try to link to a couple in the description. Start small and grow a practice. Meditation is amazing. Uh, all of us, a good friend of mine says, all of us should be doing this. He's right. The reason is that it is as basic as basic movement. If we don't move our bodies at all, our bodies will deteriorate. If we don't use our mind at all, our minds will deteriorate. Now, using our minds doesn't mean watching junk YouTube videos. It does mean doing things like crossword puzzles, logic puzzles, having deep, meaningful conversations with people. But those things can all be done clumsily. We will gain so much mental acuity if we take the time to learn what our mind is doing. Meditation does that. So choose meditations that bring awareness to what's going on up here. Where are my thoughts focusing? Can I focus my thoughts where I want them to go? And what happens when they move back to what they wanted to look at before? What is that feeling or that sensation of moving my mind back to the focus that I choose? These should be basic 101 mental skills that we all have. A lot of us don't have them, and we won't get them unless we develop a meditation practice. Then there's mindfulness practices. What I call mindfulness practices are taking anything that you're doing in your regular life and actually paying attention to it. So if you are cooking a meal, don't be playing a media screen or listening to music or anything else at the same time. Cook that meal. Be aware of the smells, the sounds, the sensations, the tastes, the visuals. You can do this with anything you're doing in your life. a conversation with another person, a walk in the woods, doing the dishes. Your daily life will be full of opportunities to try to hone your ability to stay focused on what you choose to be focused on. You can see here how meditation and those mindfulness practices are very related. And then stick with this stuff. If you stick with this stuff, ready for the bad news? It's gonna take some years. You probably won't notice any difference in the first week that you do this. In the second week, you probably still won't notice any difference, and you'll be saying, why am I meditating every day if it's not making any difference? But by the third week, you will notice a tiny little difference in your life. And by the fourth or fifth week, that difference will be so noticeable that you'll feel like, this is changing my life for the better. After a year, you may find that earworms don't have the same power over you, but sometimes your mind still gets stuck in them. But after 2 or 3 years of this practice, earworms will be gone, and the rest of your life will blossom. When you are hanging out with friends, you'll actually be there with them. The sensation of life just blowing by you, wow, where did last week go? That will be gone. You will think, wow, last week was so full of experiences in life. Wow, that was almost like living an entire lifetime. When you taste food, you will say, oh my gosh, taste this food. Is anybody else in complete mind-blowing bliss here? This is incredible. You see, the key to enjoying life, if that's what we're trying to do, is not buying more things. It's not getting more likes on Facebook or whatever social media we're on. It is about being present for the experiences that we're actually having. And these practices bring us to that presence. We'll look back at our life of a couple years ago and say, wow, I was a walking zombie. I'm so glad that I am alive in a way that I never imagined possible. That may sound like a big promise, but that is what waits for us if we start to become aware of our mind's activity and start to be able to direct our mind to where we want it to go. And yes, of course, in this process, earworms out the door. Share your thoughts in the comments, my friends. Always grateful to have you here. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will look forward to talking with you in the comments.